This is the Night Wolf howling at you, and once again we have slipped past Krang's guards into the Technodrome, so we can head over to Eternia, where we will be looking at the Turtles of Grayskull Skeletor figure, the evil samurai of destruction. This Skeletor is based on the 2000X version, or the Mike Young Productions version, depending upon which way you want to go, and is actually pretty cool looking. On the back of the box, we see Skeletor fighting against Donatello. Time and time again, Skeletor attempted to destroy He-Man only to fail. Until, that is, the fateful day he crossed paths with the evil alien named Krang. Now, with He-Man out of the way, Skeletor's path to controlling the power of Grayskull is finally clear. So we can fit the Kusarigami into his hands, basically bladed nunchucks. As part of the wave, we have, of course, Tila, the shell-kicking warrior goddess, the figure that had been actually kind of disappointing to me, sadly. Michelangelo, Michelangelo, the heroic captain of Cowabunga. Casey Jones, the one-man weapons rack, so far the best figure in this wave. And Skeletor, the evil samurai of destruction. Let's open this sucker up. That came off super smoothly. We have our little informational card here showing what parts come off. Standard for the Origins style figures. We have the comics from Turtle of Grayskull, the Spirit of Gray Shell. So I have an opinion question for all of you watching right now who have made it this far. I normally go through the mini comics with each figure. So that's 4 times generally that I go over each comic. And I was just wondering what you guys thought. Would it be a better thing for me to just do one video going over the mini comic one time and then maybe put a link to it in the description? Or do you like when I try to come up with different comments for when I talk about the comics the 4 times that I do per wave? I'm kind of curious. So once more, we open up to a little bit of information being told to the Turtles about Castle Grayskull. At least I assume that's what the boxes at the top stand for. We get a nice look at Samurai Skeletor there in a cloud of whatever, as kind of like, the boogeyman. And at least one of the turtles has a little bit of sense because he's like, are we walking right into the mouth of a giant skull? This seems like a bad idea. Which, that is a normal reaction to walking into a giant skull, I am fairly certain. Men-at-Arms warns the Turtles about looking up into the Hall of Illusions because it's designed to disorient the people coming in there. Or I should say, it only disorients if you're looking up into the void. And then Casey Jones pops up with a, hey guys. Raphael's like, Casey? Where Casey Jones tells them about how when he saw them leaving, he decided to, quote, borrow. I guess technically that's not the real thing. Actually, it is actually this quote, isn't it? Borrow the turtle van and follow them. To which the response from Donatello is, you stole the turtle van? It's like, no, I borrowed it. That's what I just said. I borrowed it. As Casey leads them a little further into Castle Grayskull, we get to see April in her sorceress garb. I guess technically the pose up in the upper right corner there is almost going for kind of a sexy thing. And when you get right down to it, her breasts are actually probably larger than they are on the figures. Because modern toy companies are afraid to give female figures too much of a feminine shape anymore. April starts telling about how once they were caught into the blast, they were tossed into a pool, which is probably the Dwell of Souls in this case. And when she popped out, she looked like this. And now she has special abilities, like she can fly. And we also get to meet the sorceress. Leonardo trying to be like a chivalrous knight. Thank you, Sorceress. Crane and Shredder are our problems. They should not be yours. No, Leonardo, they are their problem now because they've attacked the people who defend this area. They are led to the Dwell of Souls, where the sorceress tells them about how He-Man, Ram-Man, and Moss-Man were captured. However, He-Man had the brains to toss the sword away to keep it from getting into the hands of the villains. This is what's kind of difficult sometimes with these comics, because if you remember the original mini comics, the goal was to collect the Power Sword parts so that they could get access to Castle Grayskull. But then in later stories, like once Filmation came up with a story arc, I would say, the Power Sword was no longer the goal, and it was just He-Man's, and it allowed him the connection to the power of Grayskull. And of course, it didn't seem like Skeletor knew the Power Sword had any specific power, so that's why I kind of wonder about, like, when looking at this, would Skeletor know to go after the Power Sword? But they get to the Dwell of Souls, and they decide that, for whatever reason, April should be the one to try to activate it instead of the sorceress who knows how to do these things. And pow, some energy comes out and starts to surround her. However, the energy is too much for her, and everybody gets concerned. Most of them just stand there stupidly, and Raphael takes action and jumps up and grabs her, shocking the hell out of himself because, magical power. But this brings up Master Splinter, who April thinks is the spirit of Grayskull, but also Splinter. So this is the question. Like, I've assumed that this is supposed to be like an illusion, and it also looks like a bunch of gunk is like coming out of his body. But maybe he is there physically at this point. I'm not entirely sure how that's supposed to work, but however it goes, he is combined with the spirit of Grayskull. And the Sword of Power calls to Splinter, and he tells them that they must retrieve it before it gets into the wrong hands. And luckily, he knows exactly where it is. They take a vehicle that I'm still not sure what the hell it's supposed to be because it looks like a cross between a Wind Raider and a Dragon Walker and a Roton, to an island where there's a big spiral. They jump off, climb up, which, again, why didn't they just drop themselves off at the top? Why did we have to go for the dramatic land lower and climb our way up so we're nice and weak and tired by the time we get to the top? But they finally get to the top where they meet Merman, who is apparently... Well, this is the question. Because I would have assumed Merman was there to not guard, but grab the sword. But it looks more like he's guarding the sword by the artwork. There is a fight. Merman loses real quick, which is sad because this Merman looks pretty badass, and it's a shame that they didn't make better use of him in the comic. However, Skeletor shows up with the mutated He-Man, and so between the two groups is the Power Sword. Skeletor sends He-Man to go fetch the sword, and He-Man and Leonardo both go for it at one time. And we see that He-Man is freaking huge and should have been like on the Andre the Giant body instead of the one that they gave him. But then the giant arms wouldn't be out of proportion like they are in the artwork either, so who knows, maybe that's it. But I think they really should have given us the giant-ass He-Man if they're going to draw him as a giant-ass He-Man. Leonardo says turtle power as he touches the sword, and pow, boom, chakalaka. They end up disappearing, and Skeletor doesn't know where they went, but they've ended up in the middle of Castle Grayskull. Probably in the room with the Dwell of Souls, since Splinter's still there. Although I guess maybe Splinter is physically there now. And He-Man has been unmutated. And of course, Raphael has to turn a quote that Leo made earlier about him back on Leo, blah, 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 because that's funny to do. And He-Man's like, who are you? And that ends our story until the next chapter, which is He-Man in a Half Shell, which will give us that He-Man with the really awful-looking ninja disguise. Maybe it'll look better when the toy comes out. Michelangelo, the heroic captain of Cowabunga on our cross-cell. Skeletor, the evil lord of destruction. Teela, the shell-kicking warrior goddess. And, of course, Casey Jones, the one-man weapons rack. It kind of looks like his Havoc staff got mutated into this weapon, which also just looks like it's Michelangelo's nunchucks with a Havoc staff head glued to it, because this doesn't want to pop out. Also got a chain. Now, I am going to straight out say disappointingly that even though this character, this figure, looks like he comes with a bunch of stuff on him that should glow in the dark, it does not glow in the dark. Like, why did you not do that? That should have been the most obvious thing when you went with this color on him. But as I mentioned when he was still in the package, we've got like the 2000X style here, like the uh, the boots or spats, I guess in this case. The skull is definitely based on the 2000X figure. I do like that he's got the little ram horn there at the top on the face sculpt. I do think that, I don't know, maybe a dry brush over the teeth and the fangs might have been a good choice to help them stand out a bit, because a lot of the details, in my opinion, are kind of lost in that face. He also comes with a can of ooze, being the first one to actually have a separate can of ooze. Now, as you might remember, it looked like Mossman had one as part of his sculpt in his one hand, but that's not quite the same. Also, it would have been kind of nice if the ooze was kind of like that greenish color, but I think it might actually be a slightly different color in the comics, but I can't remember now offhand. He can hold it just fine, so that's good. Articulation-wise, his head is on a ball joint. It can move all around. The cape that they got for him kind of interferes a bit. And I'm thinking this is the same cape that they're going to give that upcoming Ninja He-Man. He can look down, he can look up, he can look out on the side. Kind of like, what am I doing with my life? Trying to get him to look sideways and up is not very easy because of the helmet design in the back. Although I do kind of like this spinal-like detail back here on the back of the helmet. That's pretty cool. He's got the 360 spin. The shoulder pauldron. Ooh, that got kind of ugly real fast, didn't it? The shoulder pauldron does get in the way, as does this little part on the cape on this side. And same on the other side, where this part also interferes along with the shoulder pauldron, meaning that you really only get about a 180 degree-ish kind of spin to that arm. But we can hinge it outward and downward. We've got the standard single joint in the elbow. Depending upon your positioning of this gauntlet, it kind of can interfere with the actual bend, because it can get caught underneath the bicep. We've got a spin on the elbow as well, per normal. Spin on the wrist. In and out. Oh my gosh. In and out articulation on the wrist. That is super stiff. And I'm surprised that this hasn't actually popped off yet. We get a full 360 all around at the waist. We can kick up with the skirt. It is split to allow the leg to kick up further. And this is as high as we can get it to go, which is about average anyway. Kick back about that far. Again, it's standard articulation on a Origins figure. We can kick out and a high kick, and again, the slits in the skirt do allow it to move so that it can in fact go full range of motion, which is a bonus. The knee bends less than 90. I slip the skirt out of the way to keep it from interfering, though technically by the design it really shouldn't do too much interference. And we can swing the knee around on its pin. We got the standard boot cut. Hinge at the ankle and a spin. Taking a look at this figure, I'm not a big fan of the silver spats on him here. I think they should have just continued. There we go. With the black and green design and forget about the silver. I mean, I know they're trying to do it to go along with the silver that's in the helmet here, but I just think it probably would have looked better if they'd painted this black and then maybe had like the little jewel here in the silver, perhaps. Because they also did the silver bracers, which might have looked cool also if they did a dual color and just put black on the inside of there rather than have them fully silver, and left all the studs also silver. But I don't think I've seen them actually do that on any Origin style figure. I don't even think they've done that on any of the Masterverse figures either, now that I think about it. I honestly am not sure what the point of the wrist guards are for Skeletor, the forearm guards. They kind of look out of place to me when you get right down to it. I feel like if he's going to have something here, he should have had something on his biceps as well. But that's just me. Now, if we pop his head off, said the cape comes off, and we can get a better look at his mutated harness, which honestly looks pretty cool. And he's got the pegs for a shell, by the way. I kind of would like to see. I kind of like to see this just all in black, maybe. I think that'd be a really cool harness to give him. We got the details on the skirt piece. Again, they're trying to give us a look that's like samurai-ish with him, obviously, because he's the samurai lord of destruction. But like most of the time, they don't pull the details or the paint, I should say, to the back of the figure, which is too bad because this I think would have looked nicer if they'd painted it as well. And if they're going like, okay, so if they're going to use the silver on here like they did, I think these flaps also should have been painted silver in between the little lines and the studs, just like the helmet. But that's kind of them going cheap again, which is again, and I'm saying again way too many times right now. Why did they just do this in glow in the dark plastic? That would have looked really awesome. And it looks like Skeletor's actual face on here is in fact a separate piece from the helmet. But it's kind of a little bit hard to tell on the bottom, but when you look around the sides there, you can see where it breaks off. And that yellow was way too bright of a yellow to be painted on, you know what I mean? It wouldn't be that crisp. Sadly. Anyway, I was gonna say I wanted to see how he looked like without the cloak interfering with the overall look, but just with the way the helmet is sculpted, without the cloak there or the cape, he just looks like his neck is too long. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. So you pretty much need to keep the cape on him to have it look, the head look, okay. Which is sad because you lose all the details in the harness. Which I really do like that harness design. You know, I shouldn't be having this much trouble getting these in there, considering I was able to do Michelangelo no problem. Good lord. Yeah, these aren't the kind of weapons you're going to try to do all those chuck tricks with either, I don't think. I could be wrong. I've never used any kind of a weapon like that. So the overall in the Skeletor figure, this is another one of those ones where looking at the figure before buying it, I thought he looked pretty cool. And he still is pretty cool, but I'm disappointed that they didn't use glow in the dark plastic for the green. Uh, I'm disappointed that they didn't properly paint all of the skirt piece like they probably should have if they were going to go with the different detailings that they've done. The weapon's okay, but I couldn't like I don't understand why it was so difficult to try to get him to hold it because I had no problems with Michelangelo, and I'm pretty sure that chain is the same length as Michelangelo's. So this is another time, kind of like Tila, where I was really looking forward to the figure, and then it's more of a disappointed than I expected to be. He still looks cool, don't get me wrong, but I'm just not as excited about him because I think they just didn't follow through enough on the details. I hope you've enjoyed this look at the evil Samurai of Destruction Skeletor. Please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Peace and love.